Good afternoon. It is June 12th. We are here for a Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee meeting. We have a few items on our agenda today. We are going to start with the amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation with two recommendations, one on the Edward U. Taylor Elementary School and another on Weller's Dry Cleaning. We have members of the Planning Department here. Feel free to join us at the table if you'd like. And we have Ms. Pam Dunn from Council staff. Great, as we're awaiting our colleagues to join us here from planning, I will turn it over to Council staff here in a moment unless there are any comments from colleagues, but I thought it would be helpful if we took these one at a time, did Edward U. Taylor Elementary School first, and then take up Weller's Dry Cleaning second. So with that, why don't we turn it over to you, Ms. Dunn, and you can walk us through the packet and we can take up the items one at a time.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon. So you do have a staff report before you for this item. Also today I will mention that we have planning staff here, and they will provide a brief presentation, some slides, some visuals for you. Typically that is done at the council level before you hear your public hearing. This year, and in this item, it didn't happen because we were taking this item up in the throes of budget when everything was very busy in April, and I was out as well, and that just didn't get coordinated. So we want to provide planning staff the time to give that brief presentation and overview now, and respecting what the chair has said about process, we'll turn to planning staff to do the first part of what's before you in this amendment, which is an amendment for two different historic resources. We'll go through let her do the presentation for the first one. We'll hold a discussion, and then we'll do the presentation for the second one. Again, hold a discussion. But just a few highlights in the packet before we turn it over for the presentation. In the first page or two of the packet, you have background material. We have, and this isn't just for committee, as the committee has all worked on this before, either at the planning board or as committee members here, but it does set the stage for the broader council, providing background on what the process is, what is the difference between the locational atlas listing versus making a designation on the master plan for historic preservation. Also provides for you the criteria by which the Historic Preservation Committee and the planning board review these historic resources, and also provides broader language for the purpose of the Master Plan for Historic Preservation and information that's in Chapter 24A, which guides the Master Plan for Historic Preservation in the Code. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Ballo to go through the presentation for the Edward U. Taylor Elementary School.
Good afternoon, members of the Council. My name is Rebecca Ballo. I'm the Historic Preservation Supervisor with the Planning Department, for the record. So as Ms. Dunn already introduced this item, this is an amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. Thank you. To briefly start with the Planning Board's recommendation, and then I will move through to a discussion of the Taylor School. So in the draft Master Plan amendment that you have before you, the Planning Board found that the Edward U. Taylor Elementary School meets the designation criteria outlined in Chapter 24A3 of the County Code. The Planning Board also finds that the Weller's Dry Cleaning does not meet the designation criteria as outlined in the code. And finally, the Planning Board, in the transmitted draft amendment, recommends that the Council approve an amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation to list the Edward U. Taylor Elementary School as a Master Plan historic site. Sorry, I keep going the wrong way. As a brief outline of my presentation, I have the relevant guidance from the recently adopted Thrive Montgomery 2050, guidance from the Master Plan for Historic Preservation, a functional countywide master plan, and then a discussion of the Edward U. Taylor School, after which I believe we will pause, and then after discussion move to the Weller's Dry Cleaning. Again, in brief summary, I know the Council is very familiar with Thrive Montgomery 2050. In terms of historic preservation, Thrive recognized that historic preservation is an integral part of creating and maintaining a vibrant, built, and cultural environment. And as part of Thrive, the County Council approved language to focus on the preservation of African American cultural sites and resources. The County Council established the Master Plan for Historic Preservation in 1979. Again, this is a functional master plan covering the designation of historic sites and districts countywide. The plan recognizes that historic preservation provides community and economic benefits, and the plan does not set a date restriction on resources to be considered, as it was envisioned that additional 20th century resources would be examined as the Historic Preservation Office's work moved forward. The designation criteria in County Code Chapter 24A3 includes historical and cultural significance or architectural and design significance. Any resource to be considered is meant to be weighed against these criteria and is specifically mentioned in our ordinance and our code that the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Board shall utilize these criteria. However, the council ultimately decides whether a resource is listed to the Master Plan of Historic Preservation, weighing other public benefits. So I'll begin with the Edward U. Taylor School. In 2019, as some background for master plan guidance, the approved and adopted MARC Rail Community Sector Plan directed the Historic Preservation Office to evaluate this property. The plan recognized the building as one of the few modern schools constructed for Black students during the era of segregation. The Edward U. Taylor School is located on White Grounds Road in Boyds, Maryland. The Edward U. Taylor School's history is representative of 4 significant facts: the closure of the consolidation of 1-room and 2-room elementary schools for Black students in the mid-20th century prior to desegregation. It is notable for the sustained advocacy for modern school facilities and pressure applied from state and national litigation against the separate but equal doctrine. It's notable for the desegregation of the county school system. And the preservation of this place also helps to commemorate the burden placed on the African American community to achieve the desegregation policies set forth by the county. So again, on the slide, we have a picture on the right of Edward U. Taylor, superintendent of the segregated schools, who played a significant role in the education of and advocacy for African American students in the first half of the 20th century. The school was named in honor of Superintendent Taylor after his death. So in summary, the Planning Board finds in their draft amendment that this site meets 3 designation criteria as set forth in Chapter 24A3 of the Montgomery County Code. The Planning Board, at its public hearing and work session in February, suggested that the council consider a smaller section of the parcel for designation in the final environmental setting. Again, environmental settings, that's a term of art that is described in the state code that has been adopted into our Montgomery County Code, also in the Prince George's County Code dealing with historic preservation. It's best understood as the boundary of the designated resource of the site or of the district. When the site came forward to the Planning Board, the staff had recommended the entirety of the parcel. That is the traditional starting point for all designated resources. We look at the whole parcel. The Planning Board, again, had recommended that the council consider a smaller section, and Ms. Dunn has provided a graphic and illustration of that in your staff report. The Planning Board did not draw a new map, so the council staff has provided an illustration of that. And with that, I'll pause. That's the entirety of my presentation on the Taylor School, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ballo. Thanks for all of your work in preserving, protecting, researching, and understanding our historic treasures in the county. I'm really excited about this proposal. It's been quite a time coming. We've been discussing it, and it is not only historically significant, but honors one of the great leaders of the county's educational and equity issues over the last 150 years. And I think this is a really exciting opportunity for us to ensure that we're memorializing it for generations moving forward. Before I turn to colleagues, I just want to confirm with planning, the interest was in having the council look at a smaller site. I just want to make sure that there's a comfort level with what has been proposed by staff, and that we're all reading off the same sheet of music here, so to speak. That we have a recommendation from planning. It wasn't specific in that regard, and then we have a council staff recommendation to fulfill the non-specific recommendation. I just want to get some feedback if I could. Ms. Stern?
Sure. Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director. For the record, the Planning Department supports the Planning Board's recommendation for the smaller environmental setting, and we worked with the council staff to confirm the location.
Great. Okay. Just wanted to put that into the record, that this was a collaborative effort, the council staff recommendation, working with the Planning Department to fulfill that recommendation. Bury the lead here, but I'm in strong support of the recommendation. Any comments from colleagues? Councilmember Joanna.
Just say briefly, thank you for your work, and I agree with the analysis, and this is an important site to make sure that we tell the history of what happened and why it's important to our county. And so appreciate you going through it methodically and absolutely support it. Thank you.
And then I echo the sentiments, fully in support. Thank you for your work.
Great. So without objection, committee will approve that recommendation 3-0, and let's move on to Weller's Dry Cleaner.
Thank you. So now briefly, again, I'll turn to the Weller's Dry Cleaning site. I'm going to take us back a little further. The department's evaluation of the Weller's Dry Cleaning began in 2002. At that time, a consultant for Montgomery Planning noted that the property should be evaluated for the National Register of Historic Places and for the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. This report was commissioned and completed for the department as mitigation for the demolition of the Silver Spring Armory. In the adopted 2022 Silver Spring Downtown and Adjacent Communities Plan, the council directed the Historic Preservation Office to study the Weller's Dry Cleaning building for potential future listing in the Master Plan for Historic Preservation and encourage the adaptive reuse of the building if the occupant and use were to change. So that was about a year ago that recommendation was adopted, and we are here now with the final report. These are just some images to familiarize you with the building. The image on the left of the Weller's Dry Cleaning was taken in about 1960, 1961, just before the building opened. On the right, we have a location map. The pin, if you can't see it, the Weller's is located at the southeast corner of Fenton Street and Thayer Avenue. There were two items, the building and the sign. The sign is located in the right-of-way of Fenton Street. And these are just more recent images taken in 2023 of the building and the sign. So in its evaluation of the Weller's Dry Cleaning, the Planning Board found that the Weller's did not meet the designation criteria as outlined in Chapter 24A3 of the County Code. The Historic Preservation Commission had found that the property met the designation criteria. And this slide is a summary that I gave at the beginning of the presentation, again with the two findings from the Planning Board regarding the Taylor Elementary School, regarding the Weller's Dry Cleaning, and the final recommendation from the board that the council approve the amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation to list the Taylor Elementary School as a Master Plan Historic Site. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your work. There's a bit of a question here of whether or not the council takes up a recommendation of not finding something to be historically preserved. This is not being recommended for historic preservation. It's being recommended not to, but I think it's helpful for us to weigh in on it regardless of that. We heard quite a bit, as we discussed the Silver Spring and Adjacent Communities Plan. This was discussed at least at a high level, not necessarily on the merits of historic preservation, but certainly there was a public conversation fairly in-depth at that point. And then we have gone through the planning department work and the planning board work, and then the council's public hearing. I believe we had 10 speakers, including several representatives of historic preservation organizations, and also the property owner's family, the son of the property owner. I will say from my perspective, I agree with the planning board recommendation of this not being included for historic preservation. I think that there are higher and better uses for this site, and I think that it falls short of the standard that would be needed to preserve it for that case. I will say I have found it interesting to learn about Googie architecture, which I didn't know anything about. I had to run for the county council and serve on this body and this committee to learn about that. So I've learned quite a bit. But I do agree, and will personally be supporting the planning board recommendation. And I'll turn to colleagues. If Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you. As you know, coming from the planning board, I do have a history of supporting the Historic Preservation Commission, but this I cannot agree with. I am in complete support of the planning board recommendation. This is not something that I think merits to be preserved. It's in a key location that is really key for redevelopment, and just to make it short and sweet, I am in full support of the planning board on this. So,
thank you, and now Councilmember Joanda.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Just to get it out there, it was a 3-2 planning board vote to not recommend it. What the minority? What did they cite? I didn't go back and watch it, but what was their reasoning? The people who did want it to be designated. Was it just following the historic preservation recommendation? No, because that came after. So go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Joando. The two members that voted in favor of the designation, they discussed the relevant criteria as put forward in Chapter 24A for architectural significance, and also that the building was a community landmark. I mean, all I can say is they debated upon that point, and the two members did find that it met those criteria.
Got it. Okay. So it was obviously looking at the language, just like everything we do every day. They made a judgment call that was different than. Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to agree with my colleagues. I think this is such an important area. The current owners want to redevelop it. We need a lot of the things that probably they're going to redevelop it into, and I think when there's no we were just discussing, I grew up in that area, walking around there all the time, and saw the sign, and the sign was pretty cool. I was just up the road, you have the Canada Dry sign, that was maintained. I think there is value in doing things but obviously this sign is gone now. So, but I think on balance, we should move forward and allow the owners to do what they want with this property and not designate it. So I agree with the planning board recommendation as well. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Always a challenging balance between historic preservation to make sure that we understand how we got here, to figure out where we're going, with the need to provide opportunities for current residents and new businesses. In this case, an immigrant-owned business that is looking to redevelop the site and provide more opportunities to more people in an area that we really desperately wanted and have taken a lot of intentional efforts to do it. And so ultimately we have a 3-0 recommendation from the committee to support the planning board recommendation. Yes, Mr. Sartori.
If I could, for the record, Jason Sartori, Chief of Countywide Planning and Policy at the Planning Department, and I want to thank you for your consideration of both of these amendments and for your support of our staff. I wanted to just real quickly highlight Mr. Liebert's here, John Liebert's, who was the one who investigated both of these. In particular, for people at home who might be interested in the history of our county and the history of desegregation of our schools, I would really highly recommend reading the report on the Taylor School. It's just phenomenally written, and it really tells an outstanding story about our county and the struggles that we've gone through. And I just wanted to real quickly give attention to John for that. So thank you.
Appreciate that, and I think we'll collectively double tap that point, and a really, really well done report. And as we all noted on the prior item, one of the critical stories and people that we should be studying and making sure that everybody understands of the pathway, not always linear and not always positive, that it took to get to where we are. So thank you for that. Thanks to all the work of the planning department. And with that, we are finished with item number 1 with our unanimous committee recommendations. We're going to move on to item number 2, and many of our planning representatives are going to stick with us, and a couple new ones are going to join us at the table here to take up this item. We have a zoning text amendment 2303, Bethesda Overlay Zone. This is a recommendation that has come to us from the Planning Board that was recommended from the Planning Board, a 1-year extension of the overlay zone. And with that, I'll turn to Ms. Nadeau to walk us through the packet and turn to our colleagues in the Planning Department as needed.
Okay, so first is ZTA 2303, Bethesda Overlay Zone Extensions. So what this ZTA is going to do is it'll grant a one-time, 1-year extension for the existing deadlines in the Bethesda Overlay Zone. Quickly, for the impact statements, we have the climate assessment as well as the racial equity and social justice impact statement, which both said little to no impact. So rewinding slightly, so the Bethesda Overlay Master Plan set an overall limit rather than allocating density to specific properties, and that total was about 32 million square feet of gross floor area. And the way that worked is a developer could exceed their mapped density if the planning board approved a sketch plan or site plan that allocated gross floor area, and that's what we call our BOS density. And the language for that is on page 2 of the memo. So under the BOS density, there are 2 different deadlines. The first is that the applicant has to have a building permit that's accepted by DPS within 2 years of the planning board resolution. And then the second deadline is within 2 years of DPS accepting that application, they have to actually obtain the building permit. The reason that these deadlines exist is because, as noted, there is a limited amount of BOS density. And so planning put forth this ZTA because we've heard from developers that there's been some constraints due to the pandemic and inflation, interest rates, all those economic factors that we're aware of. So what this ZTA would do is it grants a 1-year, one-time extension to anybody who's already had their site plan approved but has not met that first deadline yet. So as long as you're under that 2 years and have that approval, this would apply. There's a list of 6 properties, I believe on the last page of the memo, that this could apply to, or 6 pending site plan applications. So that's the ZTA overall. There are 2 points to discuss here for proposed amendments for the committee to consider. The first one is actually just a clarification. The way it's written, it says the deadline to have a building permit accepted. It should say to have a deadline for the application for the building permit to be accepted. So that's the first recommended amendment from both planning and me as council staff.
Great. Okay, before we take up the technical amendments, I'd like to turn it over to planning to provide the rationale of the department and the planning board, since this did come to us from the planning board, and then we can work through any questions that anybody might have and discuss the technical amendments.
Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director. I will actually turn it over to Ben Berbert to walk us through this, and also just wanted to note that Elsa Heisen-McCoy, who is the chief of our Down County Planning Division, is also here to help answer any questions.
Thank you. For the record, Ben Berbert with the Montgomery County Planning Department. We did propose this ZTA after being reached out to by at least one developer, and actually subsequently an additional developer supporting it, kind of off the record. Based on everything that Ms. Nadeau said, that we had the pandemic, there was some extensions granted by council for APF validity, but this is kind of a unique thing in the zoning ordinance where we actually have a site plan validity period that's capped at 2 years. And again, this was to prevent sort of the accumulation or hoarding, for lack of a better word, of density in the Bethesda overlay zone. But even since the pandemic, and while it sort of feels like we've recovered substantially from that, we then had the shock of the interest rates that have risen rapidly. Then we had some of those bank collapses, and now the commercial lending market's pretty much frozen, is what we've been told. So we did feel that there was some prudence to, do a small extension of the validity periods for site plans in the Bethesda overlay zone. But rather than following the sort of standard 2-year that a lot of the APF and plan validities have typically been, we felt 1 year was a good recommendation because this is a precedent we don't want to set, that we are undoing something that's pretty important to the Bethesda overlay zone. And as I think we'll discuss shortly, there isn't an infinite amount of density left in the Bethesda overlay zone. We are going through that remaining available density. And, you know, kind of keeping true to that overlay zone, if the 1 additional year we felt was not enough to make a project move forward, what would happen is it would lose its validity and it would just have to get back in the queue. And presumably, if we really are in a market where lending is almost non-existent, that density should still be there. And so that was sort of the rationale for why we did want to do a ZTA but wanted to leave it at 1 year.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for the work. I'll just note this is my district, and there was interest that came to me and to our office, and I had suggested that planning make a recommendation and decide, and if planning thought it was appropriate, planning should send it over, and if planning didn't think it was appropriate, I didn't think that the council needed to take it up, and ultimately our subject matter experts made a recommendation. The applicant or the property owner, one of the property owners, has weighed in requesting it to be 2 years. I'm inclined to stick with my approach from the beginning, just so colleagues are aware that we asked your expert opinion and you gave it to us, and I'm inclined to support it. And so I just will let colleagues know personally, I think 1 year is reasonable. We have opportunities to address the issues moving forward if there are issues, but this addresses the immediate concern and I think finds a very reasonable and appropriate balance. The BOS is a unique structure. We have used something similar but different in Silver Spring that was somewhat modeled off of this similar standard. We are going to have some conversations moving forward, likely, to have to address the broader question, as was noted by Mr. Berbert. But you know, ultimately, this question of hoarding density versus moving forward with projects and finding that appropriate balance so we can achieve our goals from the Bethesda Downtown Plan is important, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that the Planning Department and the Planning Board took this up with, and the recommendation that's before us. Colleagues?
Very quickly, I agree with what the chairman just mentioned. I think the request is absolutely reasonable because we're still in a pandemic, really, technically. I was looking at the list of projects, and I think I approved all of them when I was on the planning board. So kind of sad that we're delaying them for 1 more year, but I understand the financial circumstance. At least the first 2 I remember clearly. And I fully in support. So,
Councilor Geronimo, any comments?
No, I
we
agree.
can take up the technical. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we agree. I think why don't we start, because that's the big ticket item here. There was a request to modify this to expand it to 2 years. Council members do not see a need to do that. We don't need to take a motion on that because we're accepting as it was proposed by planning as introduced. We do have a technical amendment to include an application for a building permit as opposed to just mentioning the building permit to specify the part of the process. And without objection, we will accept that. Are there any other items for discussion? Ms. Nadeau?
No, that's it for this CTA.
Great. Okay, so without objection, we will, with that one modest technical staff amendment, we will move this forward to full council as a unanimous committee recommendation. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving through here. So now we're going to take up, we have items 3 and 4. They are related. One is the SRA subdivision regulation, and one is the zoning text amendment for mixed housing communities. And so I'll talk about them both and can yield to staff of whether or not we can take them up together. Ultimately we're going to have any changes and adjustments to one mirror in the other, and so even though we're taking up one, we're essentially taking up both. And so I just, for the record, think that we should state that. This is a zoning text amendment and an SRA that I have introduced along with Councilmember Lorianne Sales. I'm very excited about it. And it's really about the housing crisis that we find ourselves in and the commitment that this council has made, that the prior council had made, to address that housing crisis. And this new constituted committee, building off the work of the previous committee and our newest members' work at the planning board on this issue to really advance our housing goals, to make sure that we are building more housing and more affordable housing so that we can have the type of inclusive and welcoming and mixed income community that we talk about. And the COG targets that we have signed on to and agreed to are aggressive in terms of the need for housing and affordable housing, 41,000 units, and the need for them to be concentrated in activity centers and to be predominantly income restricted, to serve incomes at levels that the market currently does not serve. We have taken significant efforts in order to address this, and this is the latest in that toolkit that we need in order to address it. At a high level, this was a zoning text amendment that was modeled almost precisely after the biohealth campus zoning text amendment that I introduced to dramatically streamline the process of the regulatory review process for biohealth priority campus. The idea is if you're willing to invest in Montgomery County as a biohealth organization and build a large new headquarters or a large scale lab or expand your existing lab in a significant way, we are going to make it as easy for you as possible. And we reduce the amount of time by 75% that it would take to move through that regulatory review process, not just at planning, but the broader aspect of regulatory review. This takes that same model and says if affordable housing is our priority, and I would argue it is among our top priorities, and we have said that again and again, then we are going to prioritize these projects for you, and we are going to really push the envelope in terms of our ability to deliver these projects in as fast a way and as quick a way as possible. So unless colleagues have any comments, we can move into the substance. So why don't we move into the substance? I'll turn it to you, Ms. Nadeau, to walk us through the elements. And then we do have a number of substantive issues that we have to work through in this committee, and I think a number of very important and thoughtful recommendations from the planning department, which I really appreciate their thoughtfulness and leadership on affordable housing issues generally and on this particular legislative package specifically, that I think in many ways mirror what we heard in the public hearing testimony from some of our affordable housing providers who had similar feedback. So with that, I'll turn it to you, Ms. Nadeau.
So the two different items is first the ZTA and the SRA. So the ZTA is going to define the use and provide that expedited process. The reason for the SRA, and SRAs are for the subdivision section of the code, is it's going to create an administrative subdivision process just to make sure that the two go together. So I imagine the bulk of this work session will be about the ZTA. For the impact statements, the climate assessment was insignificant to no impact. The racial equity social justice statement was favorable, assuming that this does increase the amount of affordable housing in the county. So breaking down the way that the ZTA works, it's a mixed-use housing community plan, and there's a few elements. First is that you have at least 150,000 square feet of new commercial and residential floor area. Second, that there's multi-unit living and at least 2 commercial uses, at least 30 dwelling units, and then there's an affordability threshold, and there's 2 different ways to meet that. It's an either or. So the first, as it was written in the ZTA, was 50% of the units satisfy the requirements for an MPDU, as in Chapter 25A, or you could have 35% of the units satisfy those requirements, with 15% of those affordable to 30% AMI or below for at least 30 years. I did pull the numbers really quickly before coming in here. The current AMI right now for a family of 4 is 142,000. So just putting that on the record, because I know sometimes we're wondering what exactly is that number. Other provisions in the ZTA include a waiver of the parking requirement if you're within half-mile of either a red policy area or a planned or existing bus rapid transit route. Planning board will have the ability to grant an exemption to the commercial requirement under certain circumstances. And then lastly, for the uses, any use that is allowed in the underlying zone would be allowed under this community plan as well. And so that is the overview. So next up, I can pause here if you want to take a break before discussing each amendment, or...
Yeah, I'll just see if planning has any general comments or colleagues, and if not, we can dive into the specific amendments. I'm guessing that most of your comments are related to specific requirements, and I'll just, at a high level, because I think the amendments really speak to this, and I think I'll just put forward my view on this. Worked very closely with Councilmember Sales and really appreciate her leadership on this as well, working collaboratively. And I think the threshold question here throughout these amendments is, at what point are we going to get more affordable housing, which we desperately want and want to use this as a key tool in, and at what point are we asking for more than what we're likely to get? And there is there's a tipping point on that, I will say, and my personal view is that we need to rely on the experts in the affordable housing community that are actually building these projects and in planning to the extent possible. So I just want to note that that is the balance of these questions. We're not going to be able to solve every issue in this one tool. It's one of the many tools in the toolkit, but I think it's going to be a critical one, and I want to make sure that it is going to be usable and going to be enticing for nonprofit developers and for-profit developers to move the needle for their projects. And I'll just note, Councilmember Jawando had a representative, I think his chief of staff joined us, and Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez was there in her district, right near the Forest Glen Metro, where a MHP project is being built. An incredibly exciting project, but we talked about the time that it took to build that project, which was about 8 years, was what was discussed. And that's too long, particularly when we talk about the desperate need that we have right now for affordable housing. And so the goal is to really move that process up. And I was just at the first project of our HPF that is being utilized right by the Shady Grove Metro Station. You'll know both of these are in close proximity to transit, where we want to have as much affordable housing as possible. And that project took over 3 years, over 10 years, almost 10 years. 3,000 days was discussed from the time it was conceived to the time that it actually moved forward. And 8 years and 10 years is way too long, and it's long for all projects. Longer than we would like, but it's particularly long for these affordable housing projects because of all the various challenges that an affordable housing project has to go through that has nothing to do with county government. And so the goal of county government should be for us to make it as easy as possible on our end, because there's so many other complications in every other aspect of it as possible. So I just wanted to note that. I don't know, Ms. Stern, if you had some comments here at a high level, and then I'll turn it to Ms. Nadeau to walk us through the discussion points.
Thank you. Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director. I just wanted to just note that for the Planning Department and working with the Planning Board, we share the Council's intent and interest in speeding up the process so that we can get these housing units faster, particularly with affordable housing units. And just wanted to know, just at a very high level, that the recommendations that the staff made to the board and that the board subsequently transmitted to the Council were recommendations on how to ensure that the ZTA can be successful in providing and facilitating the provision of these units. So that really was, our intent, which was, what are some ideas that we have that we think can help this work even better?
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. Very thoughtful recommendations I think we have before us. And with that, turn it to you, Ms. Nadeau. You can walk us through them, and then we can turn it to planning to expound upon the recommendations as needed, and colleagues to ask specific questions, since I think we're going to get into a bit of a discussion here.
So starting on page 3, the way I'll do this is there's sort of the whatever the big question is, and then planning had several amendments, so I'll run through all of them so that you know which ones you're going to be discussing. So the first question was, should there be a commercial requirement? So the intent of this ZTA was to have commercial options in underserved areas and still have that affordable housing piece. But if you look at the planning staff report and the letter from the board, while mixed-use communities are a big policy concern for both planning and the council, combining that with affordable housing has proven difficult. Usually the way it works is the commercial space is underwritten by the residential space. So based on where the affordability threshold falls, it might make it very difficult to have that commercial piece. Also that often these affordable projects are not in your most vibrant mixed-use centers because that land is more expensive. I will note that in the packet, I believe it's Circle 55 is a table provided by planning of the various affordable housing projects we've had lately, and you'll see that only a handful of them have that commercial piece. So planning provided a few recommendations, and I will note that the board had them in their order of importance, so I left that in that same order. So the first is to make commercial use an option instead of a requirement. So anybody applying for this could add a commercial piece if they wanted, still go through this process, but it's no longer something that is required. The second option is to change the word commercial to non-residential. So I included the zoning use table in the packet as well, and you'll see that there are uses that are commercial, but there's also lots of other uses that are considered civic or institutional, and that includes things like daycares, libraries, museums, and it might be that the council wants not just commercial things like stores, but also those civic institutional uses. So by just using the term non-residential, you capture both of those things. The next one, which is somewhat related to that, is also you'll see in the use table, commercial uses are allowed in different zones. So the CR and the employment zones have a very wide range of commercial uses, but there are far fewer in the residential multi-unit zones. The concern here is in those multi-unit zones, you might not get as many projects because they have fewer options for what the commercial space could be. And then the fourth recommendation is clarifying in the ZTA that they have to have 2 commercial use spaces so that the applicant wouldn't need to know when they apply exactly what those 2 commercial uses will be, but they at least have space for those 2 uses. So those are the 4 different options that planning provided for the committee. I will note that you can sort of mix and match, like you could do 2 or 3 of them. They don't directly conflict.
Thank you for that. I'll turn to colleagues first to ask specific questions, then to planning if questions are not sufficiently answered. If that's okay, I'll start with Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, I think we'll get there eventually. We'll find our way. I'd like to order a number 2 with a side of no, just kidding. So appreciate the intent here, and was previously supportive of what we did. Chair introduced last council related to signature businesses that, and I'm generally in favor of making things move quicker without having to sacrifice obviously the appropriate regulatory and safety reviews that we all want, and I don't think this is the case there. I do have some concern and want to ask planning and staff around what I see as the general recommendation here to kind of say it's hard to do commercial, so we don't want to make it required in certain areas, because this is the mixed use, that's the whole name of the ZTA and effort. And one thing that we always hear, and as someone who has lived in the eastern part of our county for a long time, and I'm channeling my former colleague, Councilmember Navarro here, that people want to be able to go to things, have stores, restaurants, retail, other things in their neighborhoods, and that is less possible for certain parts of our county. And while it may be more challenging, and I'm sensitive to that, there is something we're bringing to the table here, a quicker process, and the ability to build more housing, which we desperately need all over the county. And I know the planning board is not, and the staff here are not, they are aware of concerns about, you know, that are historic concerns, but not unfounded, that because it's cheaper to build housing in some parts of the county, that more parts of the county get all housing and not as much development as far as amenities. So, so I would just, I guess, ask, and I looked at Bushy Drive, for example, which is a project we're all very excited of. There is commercial there on Randolph. That's not really a commercial zone area, you know. It's a, you know, as I don't know if it technically is, it might be, but I don't think it is. And so I would just ask, are you really saying that there can, that would be my concern on the first point, making it an option, not a requirement. I'm more open to the I think the non-residential makes a lot of makes good sense, because there's a lot of things. Those amenities is a broad category of things, and we want, it's not just commercial activity. So could you just speak to why you made that recommendation in light of the context of that I just gave you? Yeah, Ms. Stern. Yeah.
I will start, and I will ask the staff to chime in as well. I mean, I think, you know, certainly at a general policy level, as noted in Thrive Montgomery 2050, and also in our Fairlane and Briggs Cheney master plan, which will be coming to the council very shortly, we very much support expanding access to businesses and other commercial and other such uses, particularly in parts of the county where that is lacking or is not at the same level as other parts of the county. I think with regards to this specific ZTA in the context of combining the commercial with affordable housing, because of the nature of sort of the dynamics around building affordable housing, which is not the same necessarily as with a project that's with market rate housing. There's a different set of constraints and other challenges that come into play in order to be able to build affordable housing projects that, you know, I think, as Ms. Nadeau noted in walking through the recommendations, and also in terms of what we heard from developers who build affordable housing, that if you required a commercial use as part of a building affordable housing, it does have the potential to limit the ability to actually get these projects penciled and off the ground. And so I think with our alternate recommendation, which the board also shared with the council, of if you expanded that to non-commercial, it does still give the ability to build commercial, but also, you know, mixed use is not just housing in commercial. Mixed use is housing in something else. Mm-hmm. And so I think we saw this as, if you expanded that category, it'll actually enable being able to get more of these units with some other type of mixed use, but still, you know, provide the ability to provide commercial, if that, you know, if that helps to pencil out.
Right, but couldn't you? So let me just, maybe this is for staff, Mr. Nadeau, commercial being an option. If assuming we're changing commercial to non-residential, how does that interact with the first, you know, so you then you would be not requiring non-residential?
Right. So
right?
the way
Which I'm not hot on, but I just want to understand that's what that would mean.
Yeah, the way the menu of options works, I guess, to run with this analogy, is the first one, make it an option, not a requirement. That's sort of one choice, and then the other three are the other choices.
Got it. Okay, so you wouldn't, right? So you wouldn't want to make it not an option and then also change it to non. It wouldn't make sense to make it non-residential because it's an option. Okay, so yeah, I'm. Last thing I'll say, I'll pass it on for now, is I'm more inclined to do the non-residential piece because I think that makes sense, and that's something that people want. They want different access to amenities. The other thing I would say is on the housing, the commercial market itself. Like, I often hear from small business owners, and one of the reasons I created this small business rental assistance during the pandemic is because, you know, that's the #1 driver of cost for small businesses that are retail. And if we're going on the supply-demand side of things, having often these areas where this housing would be could potentially be good areas to have small business is located, you know, and if the reason that retail cost of renting or leasing is so high, which it is across the county, even in parts where this housing could be built, you know, it just seems like we're not solving that issue. Now, you can't solve everything in one ZTA, but I just want to throw out there that that's consistently something I hear from business owners in all over the county, is that the ability to afford a retail space, because it's constricted, it's just high. So,
if I could, for the record, Jason Sartori, Chief of Countywide Planning and Policy at the Planning Department, I want to kind of key in on two things that I've heard two of you mention so far today. So first, the chair used the term desperately want or desperately need the affordable housing. And in comparison, I haven't gone back and watched the work sessions on the Signature Business Headquarters or the BioHealth Priority Campus. But I will tell you that in each of those, I think the thought was these are something that should be fairly unique. And when you get those opportunities around, we want to provide a kind of a streamlined opportunity for them to get through the process. But here we are at this point. We've had the Signature Business Headquarters for a couple of years, and we've had the other BioHealth for a year or so now. We haven't had a single application come through on those. I think if you went back and listened to those, we'd probably say those were all really nice to have. We'd really like to get these types of things. There's a different tone when we're talking about affordable housing. We're saying we desperately need this. We want this. We have to have it. And so we were, in our analysis and in our discussions with the board, we're really trying to make sure we had a way to ensure that these happen. And our concern, especially in talking to the affordable housing providers, is that with the commercial requirement, it's not very likely to happen. We'll probably be coming back in a couple of years saying we haven't had any of these applications go through yet. And so, you know, that was one thing. The other thing I want to pick up on, Councilmember Joando, you mentioned wanting the mixture of uses in these areas. And I think that's one thing we're very supportive. You look through Thrive, we talk about complete communities, and you know, we want to have a mixture of uses in the area. They don't necessarily have to all be in the same building. And the problem with this is the fact that, as Director Stern highlighted, when you have market rate units, they help to offset the cost. They help make the project pencil out. They underwrite the commercial piece. With the affordable, high levels of affordable that we want to be able to get out of these projects, it's so much more difficult. So that's kind of where we drew that line. There are probably other incentives or programs that we could create that would incentivize the type of commercial that we want in areas where we're not seeing it now. And I think we should have really, you know, good discussions about how to do that.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll yield for now. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the conclusion that I have come to is that we can't solve every problem with one tool, and that we may need to come back with other tools on the commercial side of things. And I have thought quite a bit on the small retailers, which is a massive challenge that we face. That's not unique to us in Montgomery County. It is a challenge facing the entire sector. Every small business owner, small retailer is facing this challenge. And the issue in this particular case is the retailers that Councilmember Joando described that his targeted grant program was focused on, which I really appreciated and was a strong supporter of. The challenge is that this wouldn't solve that, because it's new construction, it's going to be expensive rent, and if anything, the rent for the retail is going to have to offset the affordability, not the other way around. And so it actually, the more I thought about it and the more I heard from the affordable housing providers, I thought to myself, boy, it would be nice for us to figure out a way to solve that problem, but we're going to need a different tool in order to do that. Some other incentive that if you keep it to a limited number, or if you restrict the rent to a certain level, if you serve a certain group of small business retailers that lack access to facilities, that we will provide you some other type of incentive. And maybe that will work in these cases to layer on top, but maybe it will work in other cases where it's existing storefront that is not utilized for this purpose, that can be counter-utilized. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez first, and then I'll turn it over to you, Mr.
You may not like this. Look, I'm a realist. And when I first saw this proposal, the first thing that came to my mind was the many times I was on the planning board receiving a site plan and arguing with the developer that they need to place, especially in places where there hasn't been that much development, pushing them to put sidewalks, pushing them to remove, making sure that the community, the neighborhood where these projects are going to happen, were walkable, and the cost that is associated with that. So when I saw this as a requirement, the commercial, I said, okay, this is going to be a nightmare to deal with. That's why when I saw the staff recommendations and all your different amendments, when I saw make commercial use an option but not a requirement, I was totally, honestly okay with it, just because I understand the cost of having, you know, a 30% MPDU project. You see those when the government is part of the deal. That's it. I mean, I cannot, in my over 7 years on the planning board, I don't remember a single project that does not involve the government to get it to over, you know, 15%. Now, you know, Bethesda's require, many master plans require a 15% minimum if you have at least 20 units, but it's almost impossible. So you're adding to this whole thing. And in the way I see it, and I mean, you mentioned the example of the project in, on Randolph with the Bushy Drive one. You know, there's a commercial area right there, the Korean market and all these other places happening. So I'm okay with this as an option, not a requirement, because for me, the priority is building more housing, more deeply affordable housing. That's my number one. And then I love the second point, change to commercial to non-residential. I mean, think about the project that is coming up also in my district. I'm so happy about my district. The one on the cultural center, the Arts and Culture Center in Wheaton with MHP. That will be under a cultural institution. That won't be commercial. That's deeply affordable housing with cultural, right? That's a perfect example for this, and it is happening already. So I believe in flexibility and making sure that the housing is always number one. And I love the ZTA. Don't take me wrong. I do love it, and I commend Chairman Fritzen for this. I just believe the flexibility is crucial to make sure that we're meeting expectations. And I do have low expectations on people, but I do want to make sure that we don't mess this up, and not making it a requirement. It's a good thing in my view, and saying non-residential instead of commercial is also a good thing because of the reasons you already mentioned. So I'll stop there.
Well, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez might have low expectations for others, but I have very high expectations for her, and appreciate her as a colleague and her leadership. I think the Bushy Drive example is a good example that both my colleagues have mentioned, and actually we have significant testimony from AHC, that was the main affordable housing partner along with Habitat for Humanity, and expressed concerns with this as well. And so the goal here is right. The tool might be not quite this tool. I do think going with the option as opposed to the requirement is the best path here. And so I will agree with you, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez. I did want to check in, you know, logistically, making it an option, does that mean we just don't include it because it's always an option, or does that mean we specifically include language to make it an option? If we're including language, do we change the language to non-residential as opposed to, you know, the more retail focused as previous?
I would recommend explicitly stating that commercial is an option so that a developer doesn't think you're not allowed to have commercial. And so if that's the route the committee is going, you could, I guess, redo the menu and combine it to say that you can still have commercial or civic institutional uses. And then if you're doing it that way, then you can, I suppose you would then remove the having at least 2 spaces, and of the 4, you'd pick just those first 2.
Yeah, I would. If we are including that language, I would like the language to be more expansive. That could include other benefits, as Councilmember Jawanda was noting earlier. But do think that based on the feedback that we have gotten from planning, and even more importantly, with respect from the actual affordable housing providers who have, you know, pretty universally expressed some concerns about this, you know, I'm inclined to go with that. But before we, you know, ultimately make a formal decision on this, I want to turn to Councilmember Jawanda to weigh in again.
Thank you. On the other option, you know, option number 2, which I appreciate, Mr. Du, you put very clearly, should the committee wish to retain the commercial requirement, or in this case, the non-residential requirement. So I think there's unanimous consent on the non-residential language in any form or fashion. Did we get feet and then require only 2 commercial uses in the CR and employment zone? So it would narrow where, right? I'm reading that correctly?
So I think the way I understood it is you would be saying that non-residential is an option, is what you'd explicitly say. And then you wouldn't have to go into
No. I'm
which zones
saying
you could do
I'm
it
saying
in.
if I disagree with my colleagues, I'm just
Okay.
trying to understand so I can frame where I want to be in the packet.
Oh,
so,
I see.
So under the option that you put in the packet, the way I'm reading it is, assuming I wanted to keep the non-residential requirement.
Right.
The suggestion here was only reducing that burden, recognizing that our providers have said, that could be a high burden and it'd be cost prohibitive potentially. Only requiring 2 of them in a CR and employment zone would narrow the scope of where that requirement would kick in. So it wouldn't be in non-CR and employment zones, right?
Right,
Okay.
yes.
And clarifying that you have to provide the space. So,
Right.
So just to be clear, I think that's what I'm for. I do appreciate, and I wanted to ask if our nonprofit housing providers commented on that option. I didn't see that. I know they commented on the requirement. Yeah, please. Do you know?
So, I spoke to AHC after the packet was out, and their concern remained. So I don't want to say that they specifically weighed in on these particular issues and didn't go through one by one, but the concern was issued subsequent to the MHA and other testimony during the public hearing, but after the packet was out that had the specific refinements and the preference of the affordable housing providers who I have spoken to, strong preference was to make it an option but not a requirement because, as noted, they had 12 projects AHC as they testified. Only 1 moved forward with another use, and they had to basically change what they were ultimately going to do because they couldn't move forward in the way that they had originally planned. And that was in a case where zoning required a certain use, and they had to go back and get the zoning changed from retail to non-commercial in that sense, and then use it for a different purpose unrelated to their project.
Yeah, and so Mr. Dew, I guess what I would ask then is, as we head to full council, I'm going to be in favor of this option to limit it, and then I think it would be important to have the analysis, and I'll certainly go back and talk to our affordable housing providers as well, but the analysis of in CR and employment zones, what moved forward with non-residential space, right? Because again, this, just to be clear, this is limiting a broad swath of the county, so it would make it optional in any part of the county that's not CR or employment, right? Where there's presumably already retail and other things happening. So I think it would just be good to know going into the next packet what those areas are and what the history is of commercial usage in those areas, just so we have the information. But because this is a balancing act.
I just appreciate it. Could I just, and I want it to be reflected properly to reflect your views. Before we move on, I just wanted to turn to planning to let them weigh in if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. And I just said, and the last thing I'll say is just because we all agree, and I'm happy to work with colleagues in the planning department on additional ways to get this done, but it's just such a big concern around, people like, oh, there's another housing development going up and there's nothing else here for us, and it's a real thing, but we need the housing. So I'm really trying to balance that. I just want to be clear, but yes, thank you.
Lisa Gavani for the record. I just want to highlight on page 55, we actually do have a list of affordable housing projects and their commercial component and what went forward and what didn't. So we have that analysis, so if you would like us to expand on that.
But I don't think it distinguishes maybe it does.
It does have the zone on it,
okay,
too.
So we could just do it real quick and say, okay,
And I do want to highlight that while the CR zones are predominantly in our central business districts, if you look, some of them it's in Damascus.
Right.
It's not always.
It could be neighborhood serving retail.
Depends,
right.
Like a strip mall in a more suburban or rural setting. Yeah, the only thing that I'll note, because I have given this quite a bit of thought and introduced it along with
I'm agreeing with you.
my
I'm
colleague.
trying to agree with you.
Exactly. Sometimes we find it more fun to disagree than to agree, but that's why I appreciate our conversations. The challenge of limiting it to the commercial zones, to me, is that those are the areas, we're limiting it to the commercial areas where it might already happen outside of it, like we talked about at Bushy Drive, where there are strip centers and other areas, which we might need it less, actually, in this case, because the project itself might be needed for housing and there might be, commercial around it, and it would exclude the areas where we were thinking it was needed more, which is an area where if you built housing and there isn't a lot of commercial that exists already, or a market for commercial that has previously been there, that we'd like to see more of it. And so I absolutely appreciate this is not an easy question. This is one that we have been grappling with for quite some time, and so this is as respectful a modest difference of opinion on this very nuanced issue as I think we could possibly have, because we all share the same interest and the same goal here, surely. But just to give feedback on my perspective as one of the two bill sponsors, that limitation actually might work almost counter to the thought process that we had in moving it forward, although it is a reasonable way to address the concern. The challenge of it is it might be cutting out the very projects that are the ones that we most intended to put in the first place.
Okay, just so I'm clear, and I don't think it's a limiting. The way I'm reading it, Ms. Nadeau, is that it would be optional in non-CR and employment. Am I using the right term here? Yes, non-CR and employment zones. So it would apply. The expedited application would be allowed for anyone as an option outside of those zones. The only thing that as I read this that I'm supportive of is that it would require the two non-residential uses in those zones. Right?
Yeah, you're correct. Absolutely. I just want to clarify, because I think you totally understand the issue. I think perhaps misunderstanding slightly what I was trying to say. So let me clarify, because that's on me, not you. I think it is more likely that even though we would want it in other areas perhaps more, that it's less necessary in commercial areas based on certain projects, because, for instance, you could be building at Bushy Drive and there's commercial all around you. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, it's less necessary to provide retail settings, a place to buy groceries, a place to have a dry cleaner, a place to, with jobs and community serving retail, because other projects, the market has provided that. What they're not providing is the housing, particularly the affordable and the deeply affordable housing. It's in the outer areas, outside of these commercial areas that have neither. And that was the point that I was trying to make. Again, I think it's a totally legitimate point. I'm going to yield to the option across the board. And Councilmember Jawando is prefers keeping it in, but tightening it to the areas as recommended if we go forward. Do this, and I think as long as you're comfortable, we can reflect that in that way. Planning. Is there any other comments, Ms. Stern? I see your microphone's on.
I just wanted to go back, just so that we don't lose the thought. I want to go back a little bit to the earlier discussion about other tools that the county could explore to support smaller businesses. And I just wanted to remind the committee of a study that we completed a few years ago, I think in 2019, 2020, the Retail and Diverse Communities Study that included multiple recommendations for how to support small businesses, particularly in our more diverse areas of the county. And so again, happy to revisit that.
We'll pick that back up.
We can pick that back up. Yeah. So I just wanted to just plant that in your mind so that we can come back to that at another
might I
time.
suggest maybe we do a joint committee hearing with to discuss that?
We are actually going to bring it up, and I talked about it this morning. in Econ, we're going to have a session just on office retail and planning. Planning was there this morning? Yeah, planning was there. McCarthy, and you guys are all coming to talk about this.
Maybe we can do it together.
You can come. It's going to be an Econ session. You can stop by.
We'll talk offline, because I think there's land use components to that. But we'll talk offline and can work through that. But I think it's an important point, and certainly something that we have been working on and need to think through the additional tools. And I think we need to come back. A lot has happened since 2019. I don't think that the direction has not changed, but the speed at which certain marketing conditions have arrived are much faster than we would have anticipated, based on the pandemic. And I think we need to rethink that and rethink the way in which we digest the recommendations. I don't think the recommendations are going to be very different, but I think the dynamics in the community and how quickly they have come, arguably, 20 years of change in the retail sector for bricks and mortar happened in about 20 months. And I think we need to be mindful of that and think through what our tools are. Mr. Sartori?
Sure. If I could, for Councilmember Jawando, one thing you might want to think about is you think about your position on this and potentially refining it in light of the chair's comments. In the next question that Ms. Nadeau is going to walk us through, I think we talk about the potential for a waiver. One of the options in there was to consider the waiver applicable only considering the proximity of existing retail. And so as you're thinking about only requiring the commercial component in the CR and employment zones, maybe it's further refined to say in the CR and employment zones, or in anywhere where existing retail is lacking in some sort of threshold in distance or amount of retail. Some way to combine the two. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we have a 2-to-1 recommendation on this. We have Councilmember Jawando's preference for another option. The waiver question, my suggestion would be, because the committee is not recommending us moving forward, that we don't have to go through that, because that is a very complicated question. But I just want to note here, I think it's appropriate that if the full council has a difference of opinion on this, we're going to have to spend quite a bit of discussion working through how the waiver will work, under what circumstances. I know planning has expressed some concerns about subjectivity versus objectivity of what that waiver is based on, and whether most projects would need to get a waiver and what that waiver would be based on. Like I said, unless there's an objection from colleagues, I don't think we need to go into working out what that waiver would be unless and until there's a recommendation to have a different approach. And if there is, then figure out exactly what that different approach is first, and then backing into how you would come up with a waiver based on what that is. Councilmember Jawando.
Yeah, and just to Mr. Sartori's point, I can work with you guys offline to see if and we'll see what the full council wants to do. But I do agree for today, it doesn't make sense to dive into it, but I appreciate the suggestion, and it's something to look at, and I'd like to talk more offline with you all about it. So, and I'm sorry, and actually one other thing, I was looking at 55, the Circle 55, and I really appreciate you, Ms. Gavoni. There are CRT zoned properties that have zero non-residential component to them. So I just think, and I don't know, not every place, Montgomery County has everything, so not every place is going to be, a place where it needs that. But I do think there are a lot of places on here, and some which are on here, which are zoned, that could benefit from some non-residential in those projects. But again, we got to balance it. So, but I appreciate all the work here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And I would just ask if another proposal is coming forward as you're working with planning, which I totally appreciate, and respect that the waiver be included in that discussion so that we have something for discussion, because it will be difficult to take up one without a real thought process into the other. And so I just would ask we do that, but appreciate colleagues agreeing that we don't need to take that up now unless there is a different approach at full council, which there may be. And we can go through the next few questions, because I would take the same approach for some of the questions. We just talked about the waiver requirement, the waiver fitting within the 65-day time window. I think that falls into the same category, that we would take it up as needed if there is to be a waiver process. But as the committee is recommending at this point, there is no need for a waiver process.
I did want to clarify really quickly, Councilmember Jawando, for the requiring it in the CR and employment zones. this is on me because I wrote this somewhat confusing, that when we're saying CR and employment zones multiple, you mean including like CR, CRT, CRN, like the whole body.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
just confirming. That's what I meant, and then I realized I didn't actually write that. So.
Got it. Okay, the CR family of zones, as we tend to refer to it, and that is. Thank you for clarifying. That was the intention. Okay, why don't we move forward to our next discussion item?
So next is the affordability threshold. So as you know, right now for the MPDU program, it's 12.5 to 15% of all units if you have 20 or more dwelling units. And one thing that planning had noted is there are lots of different types of affordable housing besides MPDU. For example, LIHTC, which has the 4% and the 9% option. And so the first overarching recommendation from planning was to include all types of affordable housing projects, and to make sure that as long as it's for at least 30 years, because we don't want somebody to build something and then change all the prices in 5 years. So that was sort of I pulled that one out because that applies to all the different recommended amendments that are in here.
I just think it's easier if we just take this up. That's, I think, without objection. The goal here is not just one type, but all types, and planning has suggested language to address that, and so without objection, we'll take that up. The other ones are more substantive, and so I just wanted to get that one out of the way. Mr. New?
Perfect, thank you. So there are, well, first I'll start with, in the ZTA itself, there were two different options given, and so these next three recommendations sort of just tweak the numbers up and down slightly. So the first is aligning with Bill 2621, which is the pilot bill that the council passed last year, 2 years ago. So the way the language would work for that one is that 50% of the units have to be in, I'm just going to say, a binding affordable housing agreement for 60% or less AMI is option one. Option two is 30% of the units in this binding program with at least 10% at 30% or less AMI, and then the other 20% in the MPDU program. And then option three relates to the housing production fund, which the chair had mentioned earlier, and that would have 30% of the units at 50% or below AMI with 10% MPDU. 20% and 10%. This is another sort of menu of options. The way the ZTA was written originally, there were two different options that a developer could choose. So either many units at like a middle AMI versus a lower number, and then really deeply affordable at an even lower number. So it would make a kind of long and possibly confusing ZTA to include all three of these options, but the original ZTA did say that there were two options originally. So I'm just highlighting that in terms of, you could pick all three of these, you could pick just one of them, you could pick just two of them.
Well, thank you. I'm going to turn to planning to let them weigh in. I'll just say two things before I do that. The first is, I think three options is too many. I think two should be the limit. So either one or two would be my preference. I know planning expressed concerns with having more than one option at one point, and there are questions about confusion, for those who might be weighing in. So I would like to limit that confusion. I'll note my thoughts. I don't want to speak for my co-author here, but our interest, from my perspective, was to make sure that this could be used, number one, because it doesn't matter how great we make it, if it can't be used, that is not workable, but that both addresses affordable and deeply affordable housing. To the extent that we can, both we recognize are significant needs, and we wanted to try to address them. And the thought of providing options was that, recognizing that deeply affordable housing is very difficult to do, and may not be as plausible, and noting, as Councilmember Fani Gonzalez mentioned earlier, there's no such thing as a deeply affordable housing project that doesn't include significant levels of public subsidies. Affordable housing in new units is subsidized affordable housing, which is taxpayer dollars that have to go into it. And so, ultimately, that is part of our, question here about, how much subsidy are we able to provide, and I think there's a bit of a balance there as well. But we've gotten significant amount of feedback from the affordable housing community. We did talk, as this was introduced, that we would need to weigh their views significantly, and we also have some, thoughts and feedback from planning. So why don't I turn it over to you, and then we'll turn to colleagues with questions and comments.
Okay, thank you. So I think, and Ms. Gavoni could chime in on this too, but I think that really here we were trying to get back to that same idea of making sure that this is something that would happen, make it feasible. And so the planning board actually seemed fine with offering numerous. They kind of put these all out there and said, the council can choose any number of these or all of them. The more options you have, the more likely that there will be projects that fit and will take advantage of this. The other thing that we were trying to do with this, and the board was trying to do, is try to align it more with existing programs that we have, so that things that might already be working or already going forward, we knew that it seemed like those would be feasible then too.
Lisa Gavoni for the record. I agree with everything Mr. Sartori said. I would also highlight, you can look at the list on Circle 55. These are our truly rare projects. And our goal here was to find requirements that fit as many as possible. And like Mr. Sartori has said, we have existing housing policy guidance from the pilot bill, from the HOC Housing Production Fund. So our goal was to kind of align them with existing policies and programs. But we do understand that, the board actually recommended 4 because they did have a catch-all requirement for our LIHTC projects. We understand that that's a lot. We'd be happy to work with you to simplify that. Maybe there's another way that we can simplify it to have kind of a catch-all with 2 options.
Yeah, well, I, as the co-author of both the pilot bill and person who moved forward collaboratively to push the effort on the Housing Production Fund, I know those affordability thresholds very well. In an ideal world, I think aligning with those 2 would be helpful. So I appreciate that thought process. I was viewing the LIHTC issue as a separate issue because I think we're going to take that up next. And so I do think we do need to take up the LIHTC, and obviously we don't want to exclude a large pathway. That's one area where they're getting federal government support for LIHTC. The Low Income Housing Tax Credit is a federal program, so certainly we want to layer on top of federal support as much as we can, as we urge the federal government to provide more support for housing, vouchers, LIHTC, et cetera. We need a lot more of it from our federal partners. We can't do this alone, the state and local level. But with that, let me turn over to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
I was thinking to add them all. I don't see why you need to limit. Well, we need to limit ourselves to 2 or 3 options, especially because this is so complicated and each project is so different. I really enjoy reading all the options. I couldn't decide which one I don't like. I like them all, so I don't see why not to include them all. There's nothing negative about not including them, unless I'm not seeing it. So,
Councilmember Toronto.
Yeah, the previous conversation notwithstanding, right? Just Mr. Do I haven't used it this month, for the millions watching at home. Talk about the difference between these 4 options and what the ZTA currently calls for as it relates to affordability. Could you just call that out clearly?
Yes. So currently the ZTA has 50% of the units must satisfy the MPDU requirements,
which is the 65 to 75%.
Which is the 60 to 75%. Or 35% of them must satisfy those requirements, with 15% of those being deeply affordable at the 30% AMI. So the top number gets smaller when you have a higher, deeper affordability. So those are the 2 categories the sponsors had divided it into, so that you have your 2 options and one still at least includes deeply affordable.
And this would expand the options.
Right.
To what you just described, to include at least 50% in our, what's listed in the packet.
And I would add too, so for example, the first one here is the 50% at the 60% or less AMI in terms of plannings recommended. If you're doing that one, that would change the first one in the ZTA. So it's not a total of 6, because there's already the 2 in here.
There's already in these. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that in this case, you know, sometimes less is more. I think in this case, more is more, and that the attorneys and people who sort through all this stuff will be able to figure it out, and they'll get the credits. You know, they'll get the expedited process because it saves money. So I would be of the opinion of just having all the options. Thanks.
Any other further comments? Originally, there was a concern about having multiple options. It sounds like that view has changed from planning's perspective. I was trying to, address that. But if planning has no issues, again, I think we need to make it's the 4 options, not really 6 options, as council staff has noted, because a couple of these options are really refinements of the bill as proposed in order to align them with an existing policy that we have elsewhere, either the HPF, the Housing Production Fund, or the nonprofit pilot bill. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear and comfortable on that, and it would also include LIHTC, which, as I noted, I absolutely agree and appreciate planning raising that issue. So I'm convinced. I came in with a different view, and I'm happy to be convinced by colleagues. Bills get better when colleagues weigh in on them, which I appreciate. So we will go forward with the 4 options as recommended by planning. And this gives more choices for more types of affordable housing units. We need all of it is the answer. So, this will help to address that. Okay, so this brings us to our last question of whether it should be renamed. Councilmember Giwando noted this. I actually think we have a legal requirement, if I'm not mistaken, to have the name reflect the use. And so, I also think for confusion's sake, we should make sure of that. I'll turn it over to council staff, but one recommendation was affordable housing community. The other option that I would just put forward would be mixed income housing community, which would be closer to as it was proposed, and I think also would reflect what we're actually doing here. The goal is to create mixed income communities. But I'll yield to colleagues first and then turn it to Ms. Nadeau if she has further comments.
I like the second one, the mixed income that you mentioned. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
And just consistent with my earlier, I'm just going to hold off hope for mixed use. So I wouldn't support that.
Okay, so we'll say 2-0 with an abstention if that's appropriate. Because you're not objecting to the name change, but obviously you don't want to give in on your previous point, reserving the right for a change at full council, which we respect. So let's say 2-0-1 with an abstention. Yeah, there you go. On mixed income housing community. Does that work for planning and for the zoning attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
I like it.
All right, great. Okay, are there any other items here? I think there's a couple related to processing and staff capacity. So why don't we turn it over to Ms. Nadeau and then to planning if needed.
Yeah, really quickly. So first, planning had noted, and as we've discussed today, that there are 2 other expedited approval plans in the zoning code now, and the code is getting long. So the idea here being that these should all be consolidated. Council staff does not disagree, to use a legal term of art, but does think that that would have to be a separate ZTA since that's not how this is advertised. But I just wanted to flag that for any council member who would like to see that draft. And then the next point was just as we do expedited approvals to make sure that we're still thinking about staffing needs, because of course while we have planning here, there are approvals that we get from DPS, DOT, other agencies, more people who have to work together. As we've heard, that hasn't been an issue yet because we haven't had a lot of applications in these expedited approvals, but I just wanted to flag that since it was mentioned in the staff reports.
Yeah, I think both of these are items to take up at a later date. I'll just note in terms of streamlining ZTAs, which I think is item 6 in the staff packet. This was discussed going into this effort as I started working on this and started collaborating with Councilmember Sales. I'm not sure we're at the point where that's necessary given the number of applications that we've received. I think at a later date, we'd love to have that problem to address, and we'd also love to have a staffing capacity problem because we have so many affordable housing projects that are coming forward that we need to provide the resources to planning. I think it's important that planning stand up for themselves and advocate for that and make sure that we're thinking about it. So we'll note it as part of the record that you have stated that it might be necessary, but don't think that it needs to be taken up at this time. Are there any other discussion points?
No, that was it for me.
All right, before we take a vote, I just want to acknowledge Teddy Sue Rosen and Grace Wilkins, interns in our office who are here sitting in on this committee session. I'm really excited to have them working with our team for the duration of the summer, and yet another example of the incredible amount of talent that we have in District 1 and in Montgomery County, as we like to talk about so much. So welcome and thanks for being here, and look forward to having you join us for future committee sessions as we move forward in the several months ahead. And with that, take a vote here to approve this as amended and send it to the full council. All in favor? Great, 3-0 committee recommendation, and look forward to taking this up to the full council. Thank you so much to planning and to Ms. Nadeau for your tireless efforts here. And thank you so much to colleagues for your thoughtfulness and this latest example of how we're trying to be creative at the tools we have in our toolkit to address our housing crisis. And also just acknowledge Councilmember Lorianne Sales for her partnership on this, and look forward to moving forward together and getting this passed through the full council. And with that, we are adjourned.